Too Hot for TV.
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Too Hot for TV Advent Calendar. And every day this month, I'm joined by a new guest to talk about a different Doctor Who annual story. And today, I'm joined by Martin. Martin, how are you?
Hello, I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
You munching on a mince pie, having a little on.
I was about to wear my Christmas jumper, but I thought maybe not quite.
Well, today we're going to talk about The Space Lord, which was in the official Doctor Who Annual 2020, released on the 19th of September 2019, written by David Solomons. Now, it's a rare thing for me to actually be able to say who wrote these, because a lot of the older ones, we don't know. But before we jump into it, do you have a history with annuals, Doctor Who or otherwise? Did they play a part of your childhood, your adult life? Is your house built out of them?
I have very little kind of interaction with the annuals. What I did have was two of the 1990s yearbooks that off the top of my head, I want to say was 94 and 96 that I would have got the years they came out. And one of those has a lot of stories in it. And if I can remember right, there's one of them's got the one where it's the Fifth Doctor and Tegan they go to the end of the world. They're taking the Gravis from Frontios.
Of course
they're off with the Gravis, taking the Gravis to wherever they take the Gravis. And Tegan's like, oh, we just had that time on Frontios. Like, I'd really like to know what happened to the Earth. And they sort of go back to Earth and they chat to like the last human on Earth who didn't go in the colony ship. And it's really depressing but very good. And there's one that's about the Second Doctor and a man who's turning into a werewolf or something. And they were, I enjoyed those. But I didn't really have, and I owned some of the older annuals and some of the Dalek books and things, but I didn't ever really read them. They were just things I picked up along the way. But I don't really have a kind of close relationship with the annual stories.
Right. Yeah, those yearbooks, I mean, they were the annual replacements in the 90s. In many ways, they were better because the stories were written by people who really loved...
Who could write. They were, yeah, they were great. They were great.
And, you know, people who could write a story about the Gravis and get it right. But today we're doing this story, one of the most recent Doctor Who annuals, a story featuring the 13th Doctor and the Fam. So I'm presuming you've never read this before.
No, although when I started reading this for this podcast, something in my brain started sort of flickering, and I realised that this is actually the first chapter of a book that's been repurposed as an annual story. And I have the book on a shelf at my parents' house because I was sent it to review when it came out. Never reviewed it, but for some reason also never threw it away. So I kind of was like, I'd read the first page of it actually.
Wow!
Previously, yeah.
What's the book?
The book is called The Secret in Vault 13.
Oh, that's...
But also by David Solomons.
Oh, wow!
And it is literally the first chapter of that book.
Oh, that's interesting. So I guess they start as a sort of cold open James Bond style thing.
And from what I could tell looking at it, I think he wrote the whole book as essentially short stories that they just sort of stuck together. I don't know that it necessarily has a proper kind of coherent full plot. I don't think the characters, like you say, I think it is very much like a cold open. And I have issues with it as a story.
What could you possibly mean?
And I think that's partly, I think possibly as a novel, it maybe works a little, well, I was going to say works better. It might work a little bit better if you've got something coming after it. What is interesting is that I wanted to, when I realised this, I looked it up, I found that there's a Sophie Aldred audiobook of the novel.
Oh, wow.
And so I listened to this chapter just on Spotify, and it's fascinating if you want to hear what the 13th Doctor would sound like as a roughly 70-year-old woman off Corrie. Because I think she got the brief of Northern Woman and went for it. And it's a very different experience.
Okay, interesting. But I mean, Sophie has met Jodie Whittaker. They were on telly together.
Well, the book came out, I think it was written, before the 13th Doctor had been on TV.
Oh, interesting.
And which I think comes across in the characterization, and especially of the fact, or lack thereof, because I think it was released like right after Woman Who Fell to Earth. And I think it was written before. I listened to a little bit of the next chapter, and there are things you can tell come from character descriptions. They're not from having seen the characters talking.
Right.
And there's a bit where it's like, Yaz remembered her training with the Hallamshire police. And it's like, oh, okay, right. So we know that Yaz is like policewoman. There we go. Okay.
And is Ryan actually dyspraxic in it?
I didn't quite get that far, but I did appreciate the description of Ryan was just minimal offensive capabilities. I was like, yeah, there we go. That's Ryan. It's Ryan all over.
He's not offensive unless you're from Sheffield.
That is true. That is true.
As we discussed previously.
As we previously discussed.
So, what is this little story about?
That's a very good question. It's about, okay, let's say it's about the Doctor taking down a dictator.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Which she does very quickly.
Which she does very quickly with very little sort of ingenuity. It's sort of, but comes off as pretty smug about it, and it's like, but you didn't really do it. You did something with the sonic screwdriver, I believe.
Which I mean is how most new series stories.
To be fair, it's very, very on brand. And there is one which I think is accidental rather than deliberate. There is one moment which is incredibly 13th Doctor-ish, and is sort of the only bit of it that I was spoiling it a bit. I didn't love this story, but there's one bit where it's sort of they're trapped in a cave and there's a robot shooting at them, and the Doctor makes a face, and Yaz and Ryan are like, "Oh, that's the face she made when she took down this dictator on this planet," and blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, Ryan wondered what the Doctor was going to do, and then the Doctor just walks up to the cave mouth and just goes, "I surrender." And I was like, that is sort of spot on. You could see it happening. Like it's really that bit worked really, really well for me, and that was the most kind of Doctor-ish moment I thought that there was in there.
Yeah, I think it's so. The story essentially is they're trapped in a cave. There's a Mark V combat machine.
A Mark VI combat mechanical.
Mark VI, there we go, yes. There's a Mark VI combat mechanical that's assessing them, and they pose no threat, and then it realises one of them's the Doctor and actually poses a bit of a threat. It takes them prisoner because the Doctor allows them to. They go and meet the Space Lord, who's got loads of prisoners and stuff like that, and then the Doctor reprograms the Mark VI combat mechanicals to turn against the Space Lord, and so he can never do anything bad ever again. Now, you may not like this story, but this is like the 15th annual story I've read, and this makes so much more sense than a lot of the 60s, 70s, and 80s stories. So this was like watching Hellbent and Heaven Sent for the first time compared to what I've been going through. It's a very simple story that I think just about captures the essence of the era. This is obviously meant for young children. Nobody above the age of 12 is reading an annual.
No, I hope not, for their sake. Well, apart from us, yeah. Yeah. I think I've not read David Solomon's anything else. I don't know, but I think I get the impression he is he's a young person, or writes books for kids, and that's very much what this is.
Yeah,
which is fine, but I mean, I'd argue that kind of the target novels are for kids, but I find them a lot more interesting and fun to read than I found this one.
He definitely writes just for kids. I'm just looking at some of his other books, and they include My Brother is a Superhero, My Gym Teacher is an Alien Overlord.
That sounds more fun. That sounds better. I'd rather read that one.
I think the problem with these things is you've got sort of 6 or 7 pages to tell a Doctor Who story, and Doctor Who stories by their nature are very rarely 6 or 7 pages. But it's definitely Doctor Who for kids, and I quite like that. But I do think I think it captures the era quite nicely. That, like, as you say, Ryan does nothing. Yaz doesn't really do an awful lot because it's season 1. Graham's the main focus.
Graham moans a bit.
Yeah, but he gets all the jokes. There's that moment, I wouldn't call it a giant robot, said the female, which is the Doctor, the female leader. Don't exaggerate, Graham. Well, excuse me, Doc. I didn't know there was a minimum height requirement. That is Graham.
that is very Graham. Yeah, to be fair, I think Graham definitely comes across the best. I think part of the problem as well is that it does sort of flag one of the problems with, I think, the 13th Doctor era, and especially in this context, is that you have to have something for the companions to do.
Yeah.
And in 6 pages, as you said, there's really not very. I mean, like if like they could have left a couple of them in the TARDIS, it could have just been the Doctor and Graham,
Yeah.
and it would have been exactly the same. Like everything would have been the same, just with the Doctor and Graham.
In the older annual stories, they quite often do that. They will literally just go, there's 2 companions in the TARDIS. We haven't got time for this. So Victoria gets left behind, or obviously K9 always gets left behind when he's around.
Well, yeah, that's half of the cause.
Yeah, because he can't go out on location anyway, even in books. So, yeah, you're right. The others don't get a lot to do. I also think it's interesting that it paints the Doctor as this victorious hero and warrior, which the 13th Doctor isn't really. We've had a lot of that with the previous Doctors in that run, but it's still running off that old assumption that the Doctor's going to be like the hero in an old-fashioned sense, whereas this Doctor, a bit like the Troughton Doctor, is a bit more of a bumbling buffoon who's secretly the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, and I think that, if anything, is kind of what I felt they could, even in such a short story, that they could have done. Because what you get is essentially they arrive at the Space Lord's evil citadel, and he's sort of like, right, kill them, and the robot doesn't, and the Doctor's like, yeah, oh, by the way, on the walk over, I reprogrammed your robots, and I felt that could have been done with a little more style than literally just, by the way, on the way over, I reprogrammed your robots.
Yeah.
Whereas I was thinking something along the lines of the John Smith Doctor pressing all the buttons, that sort of thing would have, and you almost kind of seem to get the setup for that, because the Space Lord's there going, oh gosh, my magnificent citadel with all this access to spaceships and whatever, and then you don't really, there isn't that, and then it's just sort of over and done with.
Yeah, it is very odd, and I guess I'd love to see how it does fit in with the rest of that book, but also for an abrupt ending of an annual story, it's very in keeping with of the others. I was interested in sort of the evolution of the annual story, and while this is a more well-rounded, well-thought-out story, albeit a very simplistic one, the endings are always the problem. I think the endings are the problem in Doctor Who in general.
Yeah, I mean, very, very often you have brilliant ideas, but then how do you tie? And those ideas have to be mapped. Well, most of the time, have to be mapped onto a very traditional storytelling format. Most of the time, some people go out. Warrior's Gate doesn't map onto a normal storytelling format, and so that you do get stuck with the endings. And it's the thing of brilliant Doctor Who, like all of the. I was talking with Joe Ford the other day about Robert Holmes and Philip Hinchcliffe, and they can't stick the endings. I mean, almost never do they give a satisfying ending, because they've run out of. They got the great ideas, they just don't know how to tie it all up.
Yeah, agreed. So, what about the villain, who is the Space Lord? Because obviously we've got the Time Lord versus a Space Lord. Epic encounter, I imagine. Do we get any sense of who or what the Space Lord is?
Yeah, you do. What was a bit weird is I was expecting, like you said, that it was something to do with, I am the Lord of Space, but it's very much just a title, because it says at one point he's like the Space Lord of the Admiralty. Like, he's just a lord as a sort of status. He isn't actually like a. It's because actually the Space Lord is the title they give this story in the annual. The actual chapter title is Diddly Dum, woo, which I thought was actually quite a nice first chapter. The thing is, I think also for a story that's so short, the Space Lord gets a huge amount of introduction, and you're getting it from their perspective, and it's very sort of doing that kind of Cod Douglas Adams-y thing of, I've defeated all the fleets of blah 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 blah, and my enemies kneel before me and whatever. And so you get a fairly, good indication that this is a wrong un, but beyond that, there's not really that much that sort of differentiates them from your standard despot, really.
Yeah. Like, the one thing I picked up on, which is again very Douglas Adams, is that they're big on admin.
Yeah, very much.
As we know, admin is the villain for all creatives, and so
there was a bit as well. I quite like that his sort of throne room thing has like glass prisons of some of his vanquished enemies.
Yeah.
Who the Doctor then freeze. But there as well, that I guess that is relatively well done, where she sort of frees them and then she's like, Yaz, take him to the TARDIS and stick the kettle on or whatever. But there also could have been, I feel like also the 13th Doctor would have been angrier. And again, I suppose, it's not really they don't really have the space for it. But the 13th Doctor does get pissed off at sort of injustice.
Yeah.
And this is very much sort of like the light 13th Doctor flittering around. There's a little bit of a threat towards the end of sort of like, you really don't want to go against what I've programmed your robots to do. It'll end badly for you. But it's not sort of, you don't get any of the sort of real steel that I think the 13th Doctor does have.
The Sheffield steel.
The Sheffield steel, yeah, you get a waving around her steel. There was a point at which I wondered as well if they decided what the sonic screwdriver looked like, because they give a description, and I'm like, I think they do say it's orange at the end. I was like, okay, like, do you know what the toy branding is going to be for this, or are you just sort of making it up vaguely?
Fair. How do you feel about the artwork that's present in the story?
I like the look of the Space Lord as this sort of like with his little sort of his evil little beard. I think he's quite good.
He looks quite Star Trek, I think.
Oh, he's got the ridges, hasn't he? The brow ridges, yeah. And I quite like the little the drawings of the little prisons with the aliens squished into them.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that you'd normally expect to see a cameo from some other alien race from Doctor Who, but presumably they haven't got the rights to use them or something like that.
Yeah, just a Slovene squished into there like there always is.
Yeah, exactly. And Ood, because it's always
yeah, Ood and Ood.
It's nice, sort of fun, childish art.
Yeah, I don't know how old they think Graham is. I mean, I'm sort of they're sort of 16-year-old pal Graham.
Yeah, Graham could well be the same age as Yaz and Ryan here, if not younger. Although, to be honest, the Doctor's looking pretty young too.
That's true. They have gone for that sort of the youthful gang.
If you showed me just the pictures, I'd say this is Doctor Who, the younger years or something. It's the CBB spin-off.
Yeah, it's the animated series, finally.
Yes. Well, we're coming soon to it's the CBBS near you in 35 years. I think it's quite a sweet, fun little story, and I am just always pleased to have a little extra bit of 13th Doctor.
Yeah, it did really make me want to go back and watch some of those some of the first two seasons with the three of them, because it's true that I haven't watched them I've watched Flux and the specials much more recently, and I've sort of forgotten how that dynamic did work of the three of them all together. I can't really remember how well they managed it. They used to just split them up, didn't they? A lot of the time, that's how they managed it. But yeah, I'm quite intrigued to go back and watch some of those again.
Yeah, and it's always nice to see them. It's always nice to see them. And so, after having some really off-brand annual stories recently, for me, it was nice to have something slightly more on-brand, even if it was at the very early days of the era. Is there anything else you want to say on it?
I don't think I've got anything else to say on it. No, I think I feel like I've been a bit mean. I was going to say I have to.
You can be mean.
My full disclosure is that I hate Christmas. No, I don't hate Christmas. But I am a Christmas Day baby. So I'm always I always find Christmas very very strange in general.
Oh, wow. Well, there we go. So hopefully this Christmas someone will buy you a Doctor Who annual and you can come next year and talk about...
Please. Because there's no Christmas special for us this year. So
we've got 5 episodes of The War Between the Land and the Sea. What are you talking about?
I have to wait to binge it on my birthday, and I'm sure that'll be really satisfying.
Russell Tovey shags a fish. What more do you want?
Perfect. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday and happy Christmas. Well, until tomorrow, I've been Dylan.
And I've been Martin.
And this has been Doctor Who Too Hot for TV, the Advent Calendar edition.
Doctor Who Too Hot for TV.
Incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home.